Just when we think we know everything about the iPhone 13, Ming-Chi Kuo comes out at the last minute with some pretty interesting leaks that detail where the iPhone may be able to get connectivity from. So we've had it from Wi-Fi, we've had it from 5G, we've had it from regular cell towers, but guess where the iPhone 13 is getting its connection from?
Space!
Let's begin. So, normally I would probably disregard a leak like this, but it's coming from Kuo, and typically he ends up being fairly correct, and he ends up being even more correct when it's really close to iPhone launch season, and now we're only a couple weeks away, so I'm inclined to think we should probably at least talk about this. But apparently the iPhone 13 will be rocking this customized Qualcomm X60 modem. I don't know how they decide on the names for these things, but apparently this modem has the ability to communicate with low Earth orbit satellites. So I freaked out when I first heard this because I was like, oh my god, is the next iPhone gonna have Starlink support? And while that is probably a lot of people's go-to assumption, apparently Qualcomm is not really planning on working with Starlink in this case. Apparently they're working with another low Earth orbit satellite service called Globalstar, and this should essentially allow the iPhone, if you don't understand what I'm talking about all the way till here, the idea is if you're in a place without Wi-Fi and without cellular or without 5G, your phone will still be able to at least make phone calls and send text messages. So low Earth orbit satellites right now and the modems that we're building into smartphones are not fast enough to really enable any kind of like data, so not really like a cellular replacement. You probably wouldn't be able to watch YouTube videos over low Earth orbit satellites yet, but if you were in a circumstance where you needed help, you needed to call someone for emergency services, or you needed to text somebody where you were and that type of thing, this type of technology could actually end up saving many lives if people got lost or needed to communicate with someone and they were in, the middle of rink-a-dink nowhere. And it's shocking to me that Apple is able to get a hold of these Qualcomm modems before everybody else, because as Kuo mentioned in his newsletter, this type of satellite phone technology was not really expected to find its way into Android phones until sometime next year, which I didn't even know about. But apparently Apple may have gotten some early access to these modems, and I'm wondering how we're just now finding out about them. This is a supply chain that maybe a lot of analysts and leakers don't know much about, so maybe we weren't just looking in the right places, but I do think this would actually be a pretty important feature, and I do hope that the compatible wavelengths they put in the modems of these future iPhones enable them to connect to more than just Globalstar, because I know Starlink has far more satellites up in orbit than Globalstar does, and they're already pretty much covering, every surface of the globe. So another big advantage to this would be like if you were on a cruise ship, or if you were sailing by yourself, or you got lost out in the ocean somewhere. Obviously you're not going to have great Verizon coverage out in the middle of the Atlantic, and you probably won't have Wi-Fi, just making a few assumptions here. So if you were stuck and there was some kind of emergency and you needed to text people, or they would try to triangulate your position, as long as your iPhone, which ideally would be waterproof in this case, is able to communicate to any of those low Earth orbit satellites, you'd be able to make a phone call, text people, and hopefully that communication can let people know something went wrong, someone needs to help you. Or again, this could just be someone who goes on like a wilderness expedition. They go on a hiking trip and they get lost on the trail, they get injured, there's no internet out there, so trying to build cell towers and Wi-Fi networks everywhere on the surface of the planet is just not gonna work. That's one of the biggest reasons I've hated on 5G for the long time, is because it doesn't really solve the coverage issue. But if we're able to transmit very low amounts of data with this new customized Qualcomm modem and using these new low Earth orbit satellites, it wouldn't matter where you are on the planet. Out in the middle of the ocean, way out in the wilderness somewhere, at the top of Mount Everest, it's communicating literally with space. So there's pretty much nowhere on Earth where you wouldn't be able to get the word out or get communication sent elsewhere. And who knows, maybe in like a longer period of time, I'm not saying like next year or probably not even in the next 5 years, we may be able to send higher amounts of bandwidth to our phones from outer space as the modems improve and as the signals from space improve. Might be possible that, the Starlink network could actually start providing cellular coverage to our smartphones, so it wouldn't really matter if you were in a place that was far away from a cell tower because it comes from the sky. Either way, this is just one of those last-minute leaks that always catches me off guard, and this one I think is pretty interesting. Obviously, keep your expectations in check. The modem is rumored to basically just do phone calls and text messages, but even that, I think in emergencies could be a huge lifesaver, and I'm really glad Apple is allegedly rolling this out. If it ends up being wrong, I guess we gotta dock Ming-Chi Kuo's score a little bit. But what do you guys think? Does this type of specialized modem sound believable, or do you think Kuo is just grasping at straws and he's lost his marbles? Feel free to let me know. This is your Apple Sheep here. I'll see you guys in the next one.